Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast. This is your host, Ryan Coyle, joined by Joe Kometz here on Pick Swap Media for our weekly show, the College Football Show. Week 6 edition, our 7th episode already of the year. Hard to believe. Good weeks, though, from us last week, though, Joe. But before we get into last week's recap and touching on this week, welcome back, and how are we?
I'm doing great, Beef. Doing great. First show with me back up at the house. As you can see, got the different background. Hopefully the Wi-Fi holds out. I mean, the Wi-Fi here isn't the greatest, so hopefully we'll be able to get through the whole show without me losing connection.
All right, before we get into this week, we'll recap last week. I had back-to-back 10 and 7 weeks, so I'm starting to hit my stride. I think 3-2 straight up, 4-1 against the spread, 2-3 over under, 1-0 on the upset special with Kansas over Iowa State, and 0-1 on the best bet with Kent State minus 10. So a 10 and 7 week that puts me to 49, 50 and 1. So almost right there at that 500 mark out of that terrible week one. I've dug myself back. You had another good week again, Joe. 10 and 7 for you too. 4-1 straight up, 2-3 against the spread. 4-1 on your over under, getting better there. 0-1 on your upset with Old Dominion failing to beat Liberty, and then 0-1 on best bet of Georgia minus 28. That was almost a outright loss sweat right there.
Not great, I'll tell you that. But I got to the point once, like it was clear early on that they weren't covering. I was at with Joey Buckets, I don't know if he's been talked about with Nate, who we've talked about briefly with Beef and all the basketball guys. I said right away, I go, at this point, I hope Mizzou just wins outright because if I'm not going to get minus 28, I might as well have some fun watching a big upset.
Yeah. All right, we will get into this week's slate now. As always, covering, in my opinion, or our opinion, the top 5 games of the week. We started off with the Red River rivalry. Neither of these teams is ranked, which is kind of weird seeing these two teams match up with no numbers next to each other. But we got Texas versus Oklahoma. The neutral site is always 12 o'clock kick on ABC. Texas comes in as a 7-point favorite over under 65.5. What are your thoughts on this game, Joe?
Like you said, one of the we do the top 5 biggest games of the week. This will forever. Both these teams could have been 0-5, 0-6 going into this week. This will always be one of the 5 biggest games of the week. Red River rivalry, one of my favorite matchups in college football. And my analysis is always crazy stuff's going to happen and just take the over. I have Texas winning 52-49. So I have Oklahoma covering that +7. I just always think in a rivalry like this, it's never going to be a blowout. And if you have a spread of a touchdown or more, take the team that's plus points because this is an Oklahoma team. Now, I think Texas is going to win because I'm pretty sure that Quinn Ewers is coming back, and I think they're the better football team. However, this is an Oklahoma team that has back-to-back been just gotten the brakes beat off of them. They're embarrassed. They're pissed off. And a great way to turn around your season is beating your arch rival in a nationally broadcast game that everyone's going to be watching. So I think this is definitely going to be a close game. I could see this being another Dicker the Kicker-esque walk-off kick for Texas or like a late touchdown to put the game away, to maybe take the lead on the Sooners. But I think this is going to be a big game for Quinn Ewers and the Longhorns and for Sark to, put this team in the right direction. And Oklahoma will have 3 losses in conference before Columbus Day.
Yeah, funny you mentioned Dicker the Kicker. The Eagles just signed him like moments ago. So I'm going to take Texas. I'm going to take Texas here in this one as well. 41-35. I like what you said about rivalry games like this. Won't be a blowout, I don't think. So I'm going to ride with Oklahoma +7 there and over 65.5. Kind of upsetting as a college football fan to see these two teams unranked, but maybe one of these teams able to use this as like a springboard game for the rest of the year. Dylan Gabriel got hurt last week. I doubt he plays, and Quinn Ewers is trying to come back from that shoulder injury that he suffered against Bama. Hudson Card looked really good, though, last week against West Virginia, so who knows who gets the nod at quarterback for Texas. A lot of unknown in this one, but still one of the best rivalries in all of college football. It had to make the show. Surprised to see Texas as the 7-point favorite, though. Oklahoma has won 4 in a row in the series, including that 2018 Big 12 title game, and 7 out of the last 10. So they've just been the better program since Mac Brown left Texas. I've been really disappointed, though, in Oklahoma's defense. Under Venables, they're supposed to be an elite unit coming with an elite defensive coach. They're allowing 25 a game and have allowed 44.5 per game over their last 2. So I don't care who's playing quarterback for Texas in this one. They're going to be putting up points on this unit, it looks like. The last two times these two teams met up, though, final score 55-48 Oklahoma and 53-45 Oklahoma. So a lot of offense between these two schools in the past two matchups. So I love the points and the over here. Don't have a great feel on this game, but I'm going to go with Texas being the favorite, but Oklahoma to cover. So Oklahoma +7 over 65.5, but Texas wins. Second game of the week, we go to the SEC now. Number 8 Tennessee at number 25 LSU, 12 o'clock on ESPN. Tennessee 2.5-point favorite, over under 62.
I'm going to take the upset here. I'm taking LSU 27, Tennessee 24. So that is LSU covering +2.5, and the under of 62, which I feel like is a crazy amount of points for this game. But I don't know. I just think Hendon Hooker and the Vols kind of in a look ahead spot coming. With Bama coming up, you're going to Baton Rouge, which is always like a house of horrors for anyone who goes there. I mean, we saw it happen in Mississippi State, who is now all of a sudden 24th in the country and 8.5-point favorites against Arkansas. LSU is a pretty good team. I know they had that crazy, loss to Florida State at the beginning of the season, but if they don't lose that game, they're probably a top 15 team right now in terms of the rankings. I think they're a lot better than that number 25 shows. And I think Brian Kelly's kind of starting to get this team to believe and kind of be like, hey, we can win a lot of football games. I think Jalen Daniels is a good quarterback, but I don't think he's as good as Hendon Hooker. Don't get me wrong. But I think this LSU team to me showed a lot of heart in the sense of they were getting pushed around by Auburn. Like they were down 17-0, didn't look good. They ended up bouncing back and winning. And yes, that might say more about how bad Auburn and Brian Harsin are, but it's still, is impressive to me that they were able to kind of get punched in the mouth and come back and get a win. So I don't know. I just think this Tennessee team, this is a lot. This is asking a lot from them going to Baton Rouge. This game was, at Rocky Top. I think it's a completely different game. But the fact that they're also only 2.5-point favorites is kind of telling to me as an 8 versus a 25 matchup.
I like Tennessee in this one. I'm going to take them 34, LSU 24, Tennessee -2.5 and under 62. I think you can make a pretty good argument that Tennessee, I'm not going to say is the best team in college football, but the most exciting team right now. Hooker is a legit Heisman candidate. He's really rejuvenated his career since transferring over, and especially with Bryce Young banged up now, it could be his Heisman Trophy to lose if Bryce Young misses a few games. This team's putting up 48.5 per game, 560 yards per game in total offense, just an explosive offense with a chance to take the ball to the house every time it touches the ball. They get their biggest test of the year, though, so far, traveling to Baton Rouge and playing an LSU team who's definitely the best defense they've played, only allowing 14 games so far. This could be a huge letdown spot for them, too, with Bama coming to town next week. They could be looking ahead in this one. I could see LSU just taking care of business and using this one as that springboard game under Brian Kelly, like you said, Joe, trying to get these guys to believe and say, like, all right, new coaching staff, new regime, new program, we can get back to that national title that we had back in 2019. But looking at the odds on FanDuel, Tennessee, if you're a betting man, Tennessee currently has the 8th best odds to win the national title at +5,000. And that's intriguing to me because I really think this team has the pieces to win the whole thing. You win this one, you beat Bama at home, the toughest game on your schedule left. I believe they go to Georgia, so certainly not a cupcake, but still, they're going to be in the driver's seat if they take care of business over these next 2 weeks, and you can get them right now at +5,000. I think that's some pretty good value there. So LSU going down 17-0 to Auburn last week, who sucks. Jalen Daniels is a pretty decent quarterback, but he can't really throw the ball that well. I don't think he has the potential to go score for score with this Tennessee offense. So be aware the look-ahead spot for Tennessee here, and with the weird line, like you said, Joe, maybe LSU finds a way to win at home. But I still like Tennessee to win. I'm going to take them to cover. I just don't think LSU has the offensive pieces right now to keep up. So Tennessee -2.5, under 62. Tennessee with the outright win. Third game of the week, our Jayhawks, baby, back on the show. 17 TCU at 19 Kansas, 12 o'clock on FS1. TCU -6, over under 67.5. I bet if we looked at the Big 12 schedule coming into the year at the top 10 games, this one wouldn't even have caught our eye. But here we are. That's the beauty of college football. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Joe?
This game quote probably would have caught our eye for the bottom 10 games of the year coming into the season, because obviously no one was expecting Kansas to do this. TCU, people were saying might be, decent, might beat, like pull an upset or two, but no one was obviously expecting this either out of TCU. I mean, this is a game where I don't even say this as a joke. The winner is a threat for the college football playoff. There's only 3 teams undefeated in the Big 12 that are left. That's TCU, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. Now, yes, Oklahoma State looks like the best team in that conference right now, coming off of last week's win. And Kansas State also, in terms of Big 12, is 2-0. I know they have a loss to Tulane. Who Tulane ain't looking that bad. You know what I mean? Like that loss against Tulane is looking a lot less embarrassing than it did 2 weeks ago. But if the Big 12 title started today, it would be the Kansas Jayhawks and the Kansas State Wildcats in the Big 12 championship game. All that being said, I can't do it. I got to pick TCU 35, Kansas 28, TCU covering -6, the under of 67.5. And I hope I'm wrong. This is like one game. I hope Kansas wins by 60. They're a top 10 team. I mean, this is like 17 TCU at 19 Kansas is something that I would expect us to be doing for our college basketball show later in the year. Didn't expect it to happen during football season. I mean, Kansas is just such an exciting football team to watch. Like, I don't really have a crazy amount of analysis on this game. It's just gonna be a fun football game. Like, and the fact that it's still only on FS1 for number 17 versus number 19, like the fact that the big noon kickoff that Fox does went to Michigan, Indiana, rather than Kansas TCU is crazy. Game day is going to be there. It's going to probably be the most electric crowd for a Kansas football game. I mean, I know in 07 that at one point they were number 2 in the country, which doesn't sound like it should be, legal, but has to be the biggest, home crowd since then, maybe of all time. Like, Lawrence is going to be on fire. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere, a great game to watch on TV. So picking the Jayhawks here as my game of the week, not picking them to win. This is definitely going to be the biggest game of the week by far, and I can't wait to sit down and watch it.
Yeah, really looking forward to this one. I saw a TikTok earlier this week. I think it was like the Kansas strength coach said like the Kansas head coach came up to him on the sideline during the first game against Tennessee Tech and was like, "We're gonna sell out this place." And he was like, didn't say when, like didn't say how, but it's gonna happen. And here they are, sitting undefeated college game day there just a few weeks later. It's pretty cool. I got to go with the Jayhawks here. Got to ride with them. Can't bet against them. 30-28. Kansas wins. Cover that +6, obviously, and under 67.5. Last time this program was ranked back in 2008. So we're looking at 14 years now. Incredible turnaround for this program. And now that they have College Game Day coming to town, looking like a legit, not only Big 12 contender, but maybe for the playoff. And they're still underdogs, which is surprising. TCU is probably going to win this one going away, but I just have to go with Kansas here. TCU has turned it around as well after a bad last few years under Gary Patterson. Sonny Dykes has really kind of flipped the switch there with Max Duggan at quarterback. I wasn't high on the Sooners coming into the year, and they just have dominated the conference forever. But that is more than a statement win by TCU, beating them by 30 points and just completely disheveling them and kind of just knocking the wind out of the sails of that program. Just to not see, like we were talking about earlier, it's TCU and Kansas being on our list for the games of the year. But that's why college football is great. You know, we know the top dogs are going to stay there: Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. But I love the mix of teams from like 10 to 25 throughout the years and just how they kind of mix up, because TCU, Kansas, we weren't expecting that at all. We'll probably get some other weird like Big Ten game later in the season. It's just that's one of the cool parts about doing this show and picking these 5 games of the week, touching on some of these different schools. But just how can I pick against Kansas after all we've been through with our Jayhawks? Just wouldn't feel right. I know Iowa State is an explosive offense, but Kansas defense showed me a lot, finding a way to hold them only to 11 points. They give up 27 in every other game besides the Tennessee Tech game. So maybe this defense is starting to turn the corner a little bit and showing you that they can win in more ways than one, because that's what the best teams in football consistently are able to do. So Jayhawks Nation, let's ride. Outright win at home. Stay undefeated and march on towards the playoff again. We go to the Pac-12 now. Number 11 Utah at another one of the surprise teams of the year. 18 UCLA. 3:30 on Fox. Utah 4-point favorite, over under 64.
I've been saying it for a while. I backcoil when I did that article for you in the beginning of COVID. I predicted what I thought was going to happen for that 2020 season before, obviously, things got canceled and stuff. I had UCLA winning the Pac-12 that year with Chip Kelly and DTR. Last year, when we did our preview, I had my sleeper team, I believe, as either Utah or UCLA because of DTR. Finally, it looks like DTR is kind of putting it all together. He has all this experience as a starting quarterback. I believe he transferred in from Michigan, correct?
I think he's been there the whole time.
Really? I don't know. I thought
he's been
he
there for like
transferred.
six, but he's been there for like 6 years now.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. He was there. I mean, 3 presidencies. Um, but I think DTR is a solid quarterback, and he showed that on Friday night. UCLA plus 2.5. You banned me from Friday night betting on the show. That was going to be my best bet, and I mean now I'm sweating out.
Oh no, not the delay.
Being said, I think Utah's going to win this game 33-28. I tweeted it out, after having maybe a few too many, after seeing Utah absolutely dominate San Diego State a couple weeks ago. I said I think they're turning the season around. I think they're going to run the table. I think they're going to finish 12-1. I think they're going to get that 4 seed and have to get sacrificed to either Alabama or Georgia, depending on who wins the SEC. But I think Utah's a really good football team. I have them only winning by 5, 33-28. Spread's -4 for Utah. So I have them covering that and have the under of 64. Because I do think UCLA is going to be able to keep it kind of close. But I mean, this would be an impressive win for Utah as well to jump back into the top 10. You go on the road, beat the number 18 team in the country on national TV. People are going to kind of take notice, like, hey, that was just a really tough spot against Florida. And the Utes are definitely legit. This is a big stretch for UCLA coming up. I believe they play Oregon next week, and then in a couple weeks they got to play USC. So they still have like the best teams of the Pac-12 in front of them. So we could see how good they end up being. But I do think I could also be proven wrong, and all of a sudden Chip Kelly's finally getting his footing at UCLA when we thought that was going to be an immediate success.
Yeah, I like Utah in this one too to cover as well. I'm going to go 38-27. So Utah -4 over 64. Pretty cool seeing UCLA, kind of like I was just talking about with TCU and Kansas, just a different mix of teams being fun, being relevant in college football. And I remember you mentioned this a few weeks ago, Joe, but you were talking about our best bet, which we should just start calling our worst bet because we suck at those. But you were talking about that for the UCLA South Alabama game that DTR just has a lot of games and a lot of experience under his belt. It's kind of cool to finally see it come into the forefront here in his last college football season. He's been balling out, including last week. This for UCLA, including last week, this 3-game stretch for them is huge. Having already beaten Washington, this week they have Utah at home, and then next week they go to Oregon. And, if you win all these 3 games, you're in the driver's seat to going to the USC game unbeaten and potentially going to the college football playoff. Utah has won the last 5, though, in this series, and Chip Kelly hasn't beaten Utah since returning to the college game after he got fired by the 49ers. Since Chip got to UCLA, the scores in this series have been Utah 44, UCLA 24, Utah 49, UCLA 3, and Utah 41, UCLA 10. So every game by 20 or more points, and they haven't been able to stop Utah from scoring 40. It just hasn't even been close in this series. Utah much better up front and in the trenches. I think they're able to push UCLA around a little bit and give the Bruins a slice of some humble pie, kind of get them off that high horse that they seem to be on right now. So Utah -4 and over 64 hits. And then our 5th and final game of the week was tossing back and forth between a few different schools. Decided to give I had NC State, Florida State on here originally. We're going to go with Washington State, who pretty good program right now, kind of flying under the radar. At number 6 USC, 7:30 on Fox. USC 12-point favorite, over under 60.5.
Who would have thought at any point we'd have a big 5 games of the week, and 4 of the 5 games would be from either the Big 12 or the Pac-12? I mean, I think that's just kind of showing the Big 12 is definitely off the mat in terms of like the past couple years being the worst Power 5 conference. They still now might be 5th, but they're a far cry from where they were a few years ago. So, I mean, I think this is great for the conference. I have USC winning this game 45-35. So I have Washington State covering +12. I have the over 60.5. Listen, Caleb Williams and USC are legit. I mean, that's all I could say. They looked solid against Arizona State last week, which, might not be saying much, but they haven't really had to sweat that much this year. They've kind of been handling their business, doing their thing. Washington State's a pretty good football team. I mean, they were one of the biggest self-destructions of all time when they played against Oregon a couple weeks ago. They had that game outright, and then all of a sudden they let Oregon score with a minute left and then throw a pick 6 on a screen pass and end up losing. They somehow covered miraculously at the end, but I mean, that was a game they had no doubt, and they just dropped it. They should be a top 25 team right now. But that being said, though, I think
Undefeated
USC,
top 25 team.
yes, which would be crazy if they were undefeated. Then you have a world where there could potentially be a Kansas Washington State playoff game. And those guys would go nuts.
It would.
But that being said, though, I just think USC is too good. I think they're going to win, like kind of be in control this whole game. And that I don't think that's a disrespect towards Washington State. I think they're really good. They have an electric quarterback. But just give me the Trojans to win by 10 points here.
Yeah, before we get into that, I just want to give like a shout out to USC and Lincoln Riley. Like I feel like it's because they're not in that top four yet, but just the way how quickly I know he's brought in a ton of transfers and Caleb Williams coming over obviously helps. But just the way he's been able to flip this program into a playoff contender in year one, I thought he would be at least like 2 years away. They still have a bunch of big games on their schedule coming up, but still really impressive quick turnaround. With that being said, I'm going to take USC to win here 31-27. So give me Washington State covering that plus 12 and under 60.5. I think Washington State's a good football team. We're just talking about a few plays away from being undefeated. Coulda, shoulda, woulda is really the name of the game most of the times. If I feel like is the biggest word we use on some of these show, if this happens, if that happens. But they should have knocked off Oregon and should be sitting here at 5-0 with this game being a ranked matchup. Cam Ward, a really good and exciting quarterback. In his last 2 games, he's thrown for 718 yards and 5 touchdowns. He does turn it over a little bit, though. That could be where they kind of fall apart in this game. He has 7 interceptions on the season. In a game like this where they're going to need a lot of things to go right as they are not as talented as USC and not as well coached with Lincoln Riley, they're going to need a lot of things to go their way, and turning it over is not really the recipe for success there. He hasn't shown the ability to take care of the ball at a high level yet. But I think Washington State, especially up front in the trenches, has the horses to compete with USC. It's going to be exciting to watch Ward and Williams kind of go back and forth with each other at the quarterback spot. But ultimately, I think a late Cam Ward interception cost Wazoo here. And USC remains unbeaten with that march towards the playoff potentially happen in year one under Lincoln Riley. So Washington State plus 12, under 60.5, but USC with the outright win. Now we go to the best bets. I'll go with mine first after my Kent State minus 10. I tried to go outside the box, maybe look a little deeper. This week, I'm just going to go to a basic one. We're going to go with Alabama minus 24. Don't know if Bryce Young's playing yet, but still, having lost to Texas A&M last year, given the controversy, the drama between Jimbo and Saban this past offseason, I think Nick Saban just wants to go out there and flat out destroy them at home, win this game by 40 if they can. With or without Bryce Young, this team is still going to be able to score the ball. I think there's just too much talent on that offense, even against that really good A&M defense. Saw a few clips of the kid. I believe his name is Jordan Milroe. I forget it, or maybe it's Joe. I think it's something J. Milroe. The kid who stepped in and played quarterback behind Bryce Young, he is a freak athlete back there. Like, he's the fastest player on that team, and that team is going to have NFL receivers running like 4.2, 4.3s. Some of the bursts and explosion out of that kid is crazy. So I think Texas A&M kind of gets caught off guard and sees a bunch of plays and a bunch of different looks that Alabama hasn't shown with Bryce Young, who Bryce Young is a good mobile quarterback, but he does a lot of his damage throwing the ball. Milroe is going to be a run-first guy, it looks like, at least right now. Haven't had much luck with over this year with our best bets, so let's just stick to something basic, something simple. We'll take Bama minus 24, even if it's against an SEC team. I feel like betting with Alabama on your side is never a bad strategy. So let's go Bama minus 24 there.
So you're going with something pretty basic. I'm taking a stinker, but it makes total sense when I look at it. Over 59.5, Ohio Akron. That is my best bet of the week. The Ohio Bobcats have played 5 games this season. They've led up 38 points to FAU, 46 to Penn State, 43 to Iowa State, 52 to Fordham, an FCS school, and 31 to Kent State last week. That being said, Akron is terrible. They're not a good football team. They can't stop anybody either. But Akron is going to probably put up 20 to 28 points against this Ohio defense. And I could easily see Ohio putting up 31 to 38. So it might not be like a easy hit, but I could see this total ending at like 62, 63, which is all you really need. So I'm taking the over in Ohio versus Akron. Game everyone was waiting for.
Yep. That's when we got a lot of action on this show recently. All right, upset special time now. I'm going to double down on my Jayhawks. I had them as the upset special last week. That hit. I have them winning outright this week against TCU. So let's go back to the well. Let's find something that works, and let's ride the Jayhawks again as home underdogs, plus 200. College game day, Jayhawk Nation, let's ride.
I'm taking Navy over Tulsa. That's my upset of the week. Navy is a plus 5.5 on FanDuel. They are plus 198 on the money line. Looking, Tulsa's not a bad football team, so this might come back to bite me. They lost in double overtime at Wyoming by 3. That was off that crazy doink off the top of the goalpost. They lost by 8 to Ole Miss and only lost by 10 to Cincy, who are both top 25 football teams. But I mean, going to Navy, going to face the triple option is something nobody wants to do. Navy's kind of getting into a little bit of a stride here. They beat East Carolina a few weeks ago, got their first one of the season. They lost by 3 to Air Force, but Air Force is a really good team, and the Service Academy games are always tight. So, yeah, I think Navy's going to kind of be playing pissed off after letting a very winnable rivalry game slip through their fingers. You can also never count out Navy just because of the triple option. Like last year, I think they were 2-10, 3-9, and they almost beat Cincinnati, who was a playoff team. Like, you can never count out the midshipmen, never count out the service academies. Give me Navy over Tulsa.
All right, well, that'll do it for the college football show. The midway point of the regular season already, right?
Just about. I think maybe next week, 13 weeks because of ISO. Then it's like the conference title games, and it's like the Army-Navy week. So I think it's like 13 regular season weeks.
All right, quick shout out to your UConn Huskies behind you, beating Fresno.
Almost, I'm not going to lie, almost took FIU as my upset pick. They're UConn at FIU. FIU is plus 5.5. They're underdogs at home. The UConn Huskies are a 5.5 point favorite against an FBS school on the road. I almost made my best bet FIU plus 5.5. I still think UConn's going to win outright, but UConn shouldn't be a 5.5 point favorite on the road to anybody.
All right. So, well, that'll do it for week 6. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, and we will talk next week.